Hi, good morning and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Peter Riggi. I'm the Global Director for the Centers for Entrepreneurship and Executive Development, known as CEED. Welcome to our CEED Leaders Talk. This is the fourth one we've had in our series. Today, we are very privileged to have our guest, John Kuruvilla from Bangalore, India. He'll be joining us today to talk about opportunities and a challenge. John will share his experience with entrepreneurs on how they exploit opportunities that any challenge throws up at them. And we've had quite a few challenges over the last 3 to 4 months all across the world. John, as you may have seen, is a co-founder and CRO of Kalpnik Technologies based in Bangalore. Kalpnik is the world's first company that uses virtual reality and augmented reality to help the faithful engage deeper with their faith. He has a diverse portfolio across many industries, from advertising to real estate to aviation to hospitality to venture capital. And we are very happy to have him today to kind of share his experience in these diverse industries as we look at the challenges that entrepreneurs within the CEED network and beyond face, and have a chance to get John's insights on things that he's doing locally in India that could be applicable around the world. So I would just say, as a matter of logistics, that John's going to start and we have a bit of a presentation. I would ask you to hold your questions until about the halfway point, but please, if you have questions in the meantime, you can write them and send them through in the chat or in the Q&A area. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce John Kuruvilla. John, welcome.
Thank you, Peter. Namaste from India. Good morning,
Namaste.
Good afternoon, good evening, friends. Peter, thank you and CEED for having me share my experience on the platform to allow entrepreneurs to actually rise to the challenge that this crisis has thrown up. We live in very interesting and challenging times, the likes of which I in my lifetime have not seen before. I have experienced the fallout of the 1971 war with Pakistan, where we had blackouts at night and we had rationing of food. I've been part of the financial crisis of 91 and 2008, which affected the whole world. We saw SARS, Ebola, Nipah, but COVID is a different animal. COVID is unlike any that anyone anywhere in the world has seen. It has impacted everyone, rich, poor, students, businessmen, entrepreneurs, everyone. And the dangerous part of COVID, unlike any other crisis in the past, is that it has impacted both demand and supply. In the earlier crisis, it impacted demand, but supply lines were open. And so when demand picked up, boom, you just plug in and things move. The other funny part about this crisis is that there is no end in sight. And therefore, I actually believe that these are truly the most challenging times that I have seen in my life. And it gets worse because there are three things that are actually making this crisis very, very challenging. The first one is confusion. You know, in the earlier crisis, we didn't have social media, we didn't have Twitter, we didn't have WhatsApp, we didn't have Facebook, and we didn't have fake news. Today, there's so much of that, and you know, people don't know what to make of what is real and what is fake, and that adds to confusion. It gets further enhanced because governments are not clear how to react. Sometimes, take India as a case in point. Some states are locked down, some states are partially open, but borders between states, some states are not letting people out. There's a lot of confusion in the market. It also gets further accelerated because we're all isolated. We cannot step out of homes, and you know, we're not able to allow people into our homes. And for the major part of the past 3 months, you were not even allowed to get people into your homes. There were cases in Bangalore where 1 month back, when flights resumed into Bangalore, people reached home and the community did not allow them in. So isolation became a huge issue, and as a result of that, there was a lot of mental challenges. And of course, with it came liquidity, whether it's businesses, whether it's individuals, whether it's the poor. There is a liquidity crunch that all of us are going through. And this pandemic actually is scary. Now, what I'd like the participants to do here is I'm showing you a picture on your screen. It's a broken tree in a jungle. And I have a word crisis. I would like people in the chat window actually put down just one word one emotion that comes to your mind when I show you this picture with the word crisis on it. And I'll give it maybe 15, 20 seconds. It's an emotion, one emotion. And I'll show you one. You know, a lot of people feel broken. And they feel broken emotionally, they feel broken financially. And that's an emotion which is very, very negative for them. Give us emotions like that. So, you know, Bree, if I can request you to, you know, just articulate some words that have come on the screen. I see people typing in. It'll be good because this has got a relevance to where I'm getting to.
Yes,
Bree,
so a couple of words that are coming in. We have fear, we have chaos, we have lack of communication,
nice.
repair.
Lack of communication is 3 words.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And then we have repair.
Yeah.
And hopefully a few more coming in. Dead. It's another one that came in. Yeah,
nice.
Feel free to keep typing using the Q&A.
Yeah, so these are deep emotions: broken, fear, alone, loss, hopelessness, uncertainty, scared, dejection. All these are very, very strong emotions that come to your mind when I just show you a picture with the word crisis on it. Now, one can only imagine what you feel when confronted with the magnitude of the actual crisis. But what it does to human beings is that it makes them panic. And this is a word which is disastrous, because when you panic, you lose sense and sensibility, and you tend to do the wrong things. And this is something that propelled me to actually put this presentation together, because a friend of mine who's got many hotels, he's got 90 hotels in India, he reached out and said, John, I have a problem. And this happened in March. I said, what's your problem? He said, don't you know? I said, of course I know, but tell me what your problem is. He said, I got 90 hotels and my occupancy from a high of 85% is down to 10. But I have to keep my hotel open because I have long staying guests. They can't leave. I have to have employees. I cannot get them to quit. I cannot afford to cut salaries. And what I realized is within a week of him reaching out, another friend of mine who had 8 resorts in India reached out and said the same words. And the hotel industry in India is hit the hardest from anywhere in the globe. And this got me thinking as to what is it that one can do to actually help these people by just the diversity of experience that I've had. And I've worked in the airline business, like Peter said. I have run an airline. I've been head of marketing and sales for a hospitality industry. I have done venture funding. I have done real estate. I've done advertising. So I just put all my experience together and I said, look, the first thing you need to do is stop panicking. Stop focusing on the negativity. And I took that entire Corona mask and I layered a picture of chains being unshackled and birds flying out. And he had the audacity to tell me, you know, it's easy for you to say this, but give me an example of how I can get out of this mess. And I said, first of all, you have to stop thinking negativity. Look at the opportunity. And I gave him a word which actually shocked him. I said, you have to stop being this big dude running this massive organization with this great brand, people looking up to you. And I said, start becoming a cockroach. And he said, what? And it was a Zoom call. And I said, this is exactly it. When I said the word cockroach, you cringed. You said, what? And I said, understand the cockroach is one insect which has survived for millions of years. And it survived the worst situations, it survived the good situations, and it is alive. So the first thing you need to do is get rid of this stupid ego of yours and start thinking of another word called survival. And I said, you've got 5,000 employees. Understand that if you die, when I say die, it's a figure of speech. If your company dies, these 5,000 people are dead. For the larger good of many in your company, it may be worthwhile to let go of some. But I told him, don't do knee-jerk reactions. The worst thing you can do is panic and do knee-jerk reactions. So what I actually did is I actually sent him a slide, and this I created. And I said, the problem with you guys is that for 5 decades, you've grown from 1 hotel to 90 hotels. You've been so damn successful that you've got comfortable. You know, I used to be an athlete for the best part of my life. The minute I got into the corporate world and I started tasting success, I got a paunch. And I said, you've got a paunch in your organization. You got flab. And with that flab, you sit back and you become arrogant. And with that arrogance comes this comfort where you don't want to challenge the status quo. And this, my friends, is the biggest challenge for startups. You get so carried away with the initial success that you think that the world is out there for you. And the next few slides, I'm going to tell you what I suggested to him and what happened. So I said, take your business, divide into 3 buckets. The first bucket is assets. And this is true of you in your personal life. This is true of you in a startup. This is true of you in a large corporation. And I'm taking one example of hospitality, and this applies everywhere. His assets before the lockdown was rooms. He had 80% occupancy. He had EBITDA margins of 16%. His kitchens, he had 3 kitchens in 1 hotel, and his kitchens were operating at 70% occupancy. His laundry, which was captive for hotel guests and for hotel linen, was at 30% occupancy. His banquets was at 50% occupancy, and the land was consuming 40% of the space. And I told him, look at the audacity of your arrogance. How come you never looked at taking the capacity of laundries to 100%? How come you never took the capacity of kitchens from 70% to 90%? He said, man, it's so easy for you to say this. I said, but the reason I'm saying this is in your comfort zone, these have overnight become liabilities for you. Your occupancy for your rooms is 10%. Your occupancy for your kitchen is 5%. Your occupancy for your laundry is 5%. Your banquets is 0, nada. Your land is just there. It's doing nothing for you. And you also have security personnel. What are you doing with them? And when I told him this, he said, you're telling me the obvious. I said, absolutely. Prepare an Excel sheet on a financial table, list on the assets value, list on the liabilities, and what you need to do is understand which asset of yours is giving you the maximum stress. So the third column that I got him to do is anxiety. I said, what are you anxious about? And this is very important to take your fears head on. His anxiety was he has bank loans to pay. He said, man, my hotel is shut. I don't have money to pay bank loans. Okay, what's your next one? Employee well-being. I said, I told you to be a cockroach. Important for you to understand that for the larger good of the people, you may have to let go of some. The third was my reputation. What if I do stupid things? I said, if you have to do stupid things like a cockroach to survive, people will forget it. Understand human memory is short. No, but I have a brand reputation. The press will cover it. I said, so don't worry about brand reputation. Everybody is going to be in the boondocks because of this. So don't worry about negative PR. And he said, when will this crisis end? I said, your guess is as good as mine, but my guess is between 18 to 24 months. He said, rubbish. I said, look, I'm not a soothsayer. I'm not a predictor, but from what I've gathered, because I don't have the anxiety that you have, I am distancing myself, and I believe that this crisis will affect the hospitality industry for 18 to 24 months. Then I said, if you were to think completely radical, instead of challenges, look at your opportunities. Is there any way that you can convert your liabilities into opportunities? And then comes a fourth bucket. You look at trends. So if you look at rooms, there's a trend of co-living and co-working. That also has got impact. And I'll tell you what I suggested. I said, 1 month of lockdown, everything was shut. But within the second month, the government in India was allowing home delivery, like Uber Eats. So we have a lot of companies which just takes food from a restaurant and delivers to your house, and they take an arbitrage. The retail business opened up. And I said, for example, my clothes were stuck in a dry cleaner's and I didn't know what to do with it because the dry cleaner was 5 kilometers away. But right outside my house is a hotel. It's a Courtyard by Marriott. Imagine now, hotels are so well situated. Imagine if they had told me, listen, I'm happy to take your laundry. I know that HBS, UPenn, all these guys are doing digital learning. So if any entrepreneur on this platform is in the education space, that's manna from heaven for you. There's also a great need in India for organic food. There's also a need in India for security using cameras. So he said, hey, you've done a great thing for me. You've told me what are the trends in the market? How does it impact me? I can't be setting up, a home delivery system. I said, stop reacting. First of all, be a cockroach, eat your food, be happy, be content, and then pull back. And I said, now look at how you can do partnerships, because this crisis, like I said, has impacted everybody. The hotel industry, I know when I was in the hotel industry, many companies actually stayed in my hotel for years on end. The consulting firms, the venture capital, the investors, the bankers had taken floors in my hotel and taken conference rooms, and they were high-end guests. They were called long stays. I said, hotels are far more hygienic than co-working spaces. You can look at partnering with the co-working spaces and the co-living spaces and say, listen, for the high-end consumer, I'm happy to do this. In the food delivery space, in India, there are two companies called Zomato and Swiggy. They, about a year and a half back, were investing millions of dollars setting up cloud kitchens. Now, what better solution for a hotel company? Instantly, this friend of mine in one city, in one hotel, he had 3 kitchens. He shut down 2 of the kitchens. I said, you've done such a ridiculously stupid thing. You should just, and the reason I use these words is that sometimes the arrogance of success must be broken down consciously. And I told him, go to these guys and actually tell them, listen, don't spend your millions. Give me a part of that and I will lease my kitchens to you. And the beauty of what then happens is that in this one city, he got 6,000 loyal customers who were eating in his restaurants twice a year from that city. So I said, you give one kitchen to a cloud kitchen company, let them do delivery of their food from their kitchen, use their delivery service to cater to your loyal customers. So your kitchen actually gets capital upfront and starts getting recurring revenue. I said, your laundry service, and I said, Apur, I have a problem. My hotel here in front, I wish they could at least get my suit because my suits are lying in my cupboard. I would like to get all of them, it's like spring cleaning, get them all done, and they won't do it. Harvard Business School has set up a facility in the Taj Hotel in Mumbai where they actually do distance learning. But people come to the hotel and there is a panel and they do distance teaching. What a great place to convert your banquet halls without compromising on your brand reputation to actually tie up with these guys and say, listen, I'm happy to bring my customers. And one of the questions we asked is, look, I have banquet halls which can seat 500 people in clusters. I said, you don't need 500 because you need to keep your distancing norms. Bring in 100 people. And that became an important thing. I said, look, all your hotels have vacant land. And this is something which never ceases to amaze me. The guest who goes into a hotel, and many of you are travelers, and Peter, you travel quite a bit. When you go into a hotel, chances you get into a hotel in the night, you get into a workshop in the morning, you don't get a chance to enjoy the landscaping that's outside. But there are so many herbs. You can set up herb gardens, you can set up tomatoes, you can set up brinjals, you can set up organic farming which can cater to your own kitchens, and you can also give to the neighborhood. There's a friend of mine who runs a very large security company, and he's in a video management and video analytics companies. in the locality where he lives, the community got in and said, listen, we've got 5 different security companies managing our camera feeds. Can you create a NOC, a network operating center, where all feeds come into one central place and your analytics does the processing and you become a central NOC? And hotels have got security guards. They've got a central a place where all feeds from across the hotel comes in. They could take up, they could use these resources to actually feed and manage security for the community. The other side, I have actually 2 friends of mine who run 2 large companies in the online travel space. They're shut. They can't do anything. No hotels, no airlines, no nothing. And he said, I have no assets. I said, look closely. He said, no, I have no assets. I said, look closely. He's sitting on 30 million customers. 30 million customers who he stopped communicating with. Man, 30 million customers, companies would give an arm and leg for that. Hotels need business. Food companies need customers. You could actually leverage each other's network to bring collaboration to actually do this. So I spent 2 weeks doing this, and he said, you know, all this sounds good. I got involved with his board members, and then they kept procrastinating. They said, you know, brand, you know, and this is the challenge I have. Dinosaurs always die, but if you're a cockroach, you survive. So what happens? In April, 2 items came out in digital media. One is a hotel company saying, listen, I'm happy to do house cleaning for you because a hotel has one of the best housekeeping services. And listen, I will do your laundry. And I sent it to him and said, listen, this is a global brand. It is Marriott. If a brand like this can decide to actually convert that challenge into opportunities and seize it, why can't an Indian brand do this? And then the world's most luxurious hotel brand is someone I worked with called the Oberoi Group. In April, they started doing home delivery. And you know, so what I suggested out of a crisis in March actually started getting done now. So I mean, I will take one slide, and the same picture that I showed you, I now want to add another word. And the word is, the word is challenge. Okay? And you know, I've exposed it, but if I now put this word instead of a crisis, I put the word challenge. And for those of you who didn't see what I put down, just put down one word that comes to your mind, an emotion, when I show the same broken tree with the word challenge. Bree, can I ask you to share some words? But since I exposed it, let me share. You know, the words could be change, could be hope, could be fresh beginnings, could be new start, could be discovery, could be romance, could be adventure. Suddenly what happens is that with the right perspective, what was a crisis in your mind? And that's the biggest challenge that you have, can actually become an opportunity if you start looking at things very, very differently. And you know, this is not about you and I. Life throws shit at us. And I'll show you the next slide. You know, when I take the word crisis and I did a thesaurus search, there were 48 synonyms, which means there were 48 words which were the same as a crisis. Catastrophe, pressure, situation, embarrassment, imbroglio, necessity, past, trauma, lot of negativity. But when I actually look at the positive side of life, there were only 16 words. So I'm saying life throws far more negativity at us, and it is our job to actually look for those glimmers of hope and get positivity out of this. And you know, this applies to our personal lives. And I'm going to share with you a disaster, a crisis that hit me in my life, which I wish none of you ever experience. This is what happened to me. In 2007, December 25th, when the world was celebrating the birth of Christ, I was wheeled into hospital with a life-threatening illness called Steven Johnson syndrome. It happens to 1 in a million. 95% of people die, and the 5% who survive are handicapped for life. You have to understand, I was at the peak of my career. I was at a fancy salary. I used to be global head of marketing for the Oberoi Group. And as a result of this, I could not go out of the house because I couldn't get exposed to exactly what is happening now. But this was one individual against the world. This now every individual against the world. And I actually went into depression. But this is where family comes in. What did I do? Those days, I didn't use the 3 words, assets, liabilities, and trends, but I used to do what's called a SWOT, strength, weakness, opportunity. I sat down and I said, what are the assets that I have? And the assets that I had was my imagination, my intellect. They still continue to be with me. But my energy, I used to bound with energy. I was sapped of energy. You know, I used to exude positivity whenever I used to go meet people. I couldn't go out to meet people. And suddenly, these assets of mine became my liabilities. I had to give up that great job and come back home to Bangalore, no salary, exorbitant hospital bills. I couldn't get anything to do. And I looked at my assets and I said, these are my liabilities. But I looked at how could I convert some assets to liabilities and realized that I had tremendous experience across verticals. And this was a time when India was actually climbing up the ladder in the entrepreneurial space. So I said, from the confines of my room, I could actually advise startups. So I actually became an entrepreneur's entrepreneur. And I used to guide entrepreneurs on how to get out of their problem and scale up. So I actually took an asset, which became a liability, convert that liability, basis a trend that happened. And for the next 3-4 years, I did nothing but advise startups. And that brought me a whole host of positivity, comfort, and I looked at life very differently. So my advice to all of you on this platform is understand that day after day turns to night. Night has to give way to day. So please do not get into this panic mode of the crisis. I know how serious it is. I've been through it. Plan for sunshine. And the minute you start looking at life positively, your life will take on a different challenge. I have written 2 blogs. One is called Destructive Disruption. I've been part of 2 companies which have done this. And for startups and for companies who don't want to get into destructive disruption, there is something called exploitive disruption. So, Peter, I think I'm 26 minutes. I'm within the time frame. Over to you and over to people for questions.
Excellent. Thank you, John, so much. I really appreciate it. Very enlightening. I knew you would come through on this one. 2 things before we kind of get started on the Q&A. I think your last point was very, very powerful. You don't want to live in what I would term the wreckage of the future, because we don't know what's going to happen. So you have to live in the present. I will say, I will definitely keep that term, dinosaurs always die, cockroaches survive. That's, you might want to trademark that one. I like that one a lot. And before we move to the Q&A, I would just say this is part of the reason we brought you on for the Leaders Talk, is that what you bring up fits in very well with what CEED has been doing over the years and really has to do at this moment in time. We're all about giving entrepreneurs kind of that sounding board, that space, a trusted space where they can kind of talk about these challenges, and because the answers are beyond themselves. They need other examples, other good ideas. And so if you can get to other entrepreneurs, get to mentors, or in your case, as you said, an entrepreneur's entrepreneur, right? Or other experts, these pathways start to become a little bit more clear, and you can start to see where you can take action. So that I just want to say thank you. And I think that message resonates very strongly. I think with this, we'll open up the Q&A, and we have a little bit of a queue that I've seen come through. And our first question comes to us from Slovenia. So Bree, you could start.
Hi. Hi, John.
Hi, Pavle.
So my question, you basically answered what I wanted to ask you. What's the biggest mistake you can make? And that's not to panic. So I needed to came up with another question. Where do you think are, in short term and mid-term, the biggest opportunities, for example, hospitality business that you are deep into professionally? And what are maybe some other mistakes that, these two businesses can make down the road in the next 2 years of recovery? Thank you.
Okay, good question, Pablo. I'll answer the first one because this is again another pet theory of mine. I believe in the long term, there's only one reality. We're all dead. So don't worry about the long term. As startups, let's worry about the short term and the midterm. And one of the biggest mistakes that we can make and there's a question that another person has asked in the Q&A, is if we start taking decisions in isolation without keeping the larger team involved and get them to take ownership of what you're planning to do, you are bound to fail. You need champions for change in your organization. It could be a 10-man startup, but it's good to huddle, share your thoughts with them, and get everybody believing that the problem is theirs and the solution is theirs. So if you try and transition to any change, the biggest mistake you can make, Pavle, is you not do anything and wait, hide and wait for the storm to blow over. This storm is not going to blow over in the short term. So you have to walk into the storm and you have to figure out how to carve out your space and get your team onboarded with you. If you don't do that, you will make another mistake. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it is.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, John. That was fantastic. Our next question comes to us from North Macedonia. Dimitar?
Hi, John. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah.
Hi to everybody, to all the participants. Thank you to all the people who make this happen. Really inspiring presentation, John, on your side. I'm coming from Macedonia. I'm founder of a small company with 20 plus employees doing work in the digital transformation, more or less that you're building your career at the moment now, John. So what you said was quite inspiring in few directions. But I'm all the time, I'm the people person in the company. I'm always thinking about the employees, the people who are making the team and allow me to grow the business, so on. So my biggest fears in this crisis is how to organize, how to motivate my employees and to bring them on board with all the philosophy, all the positive energy, and to look on the, as you said, during the night, to think about the sunrise the next day. So that's my biggest fear. And I think I have a lot of problems motivating them and bringing them on board with my vision, because I'm talking with them, I'm close with them on a daily basis, but from one side, but from the other side, they need to do their work by their own. So it's a struggle for me. Can you give me some advice or some thoughts in this direction, since you're really professional in the hospitality with a lot of employees and a lot of companies?
So Dimitra, I worked in a company where about 3,000 people reported to me, okay? And there was no crisis, but we were fighting a battle because we were a small company, small airline taking on the giants. And you know how in the low-cost world, the big guys will definitely come to kill you, okay? Now, I'm going to give you a very contrarian view. This is the way I approach it. We are wired differently. So take whatever lessons you can. You should go to YouTube and watch my favorite show. It's called The Great Migration. Those of you who live in Africa, the Masai Mara, the Great Migration is about millions of wildebeest and animals crossing the sub-Saharan continent in search of water. And what happens through that journey? You have prey and you have predator. The predators are the crocodiles, the predators are the lions, the predators are the cheetahs, and they are waiting for people, for beasts to be stragglers, to be killed and fed. What happens, Dimitra, is the weak fall prey to the predator. Also, the weak amongst the predator gets killed by the hooves of the wildebeest. But what happens at the end of the journey is hundreds of thousands of new births happen, hundreds of thousands of deaths happen, but both sides, prey and predator, emerge stronger. So my advice to you is, during this crisis, if you have stragglers in the company, counsel them once, then let them go. You don't need negative energy in your company at this point in time. You are at war, Dimitar. You are at war, and all your focus, all your energy should be how to win that war. And you need people who will follow you into the battleground, and that's how wars are won. Who will follow you to the battleground saying, this is for me. I have to win this. This company is mine. So the way I have always looked at life, you take the stragglers, you understand if they have an attitude issue, if they have negativity issue, and you let them go. Because they can pull down the entire company. And that's the way I've always approached life.
Thank you.
But look at this serial. YouTube, you'll get it, The Great Migration. It's amazing how crocodiles are predators, how lions, predators, how cheetahs, predators, all also died during this great migration.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Dimitar. Thanks, John. I guess I'll remember to stay in the center of the pack. You don't want to be on the edges. I think our next question comes to us from Tunisia.
Hello, hi. I'm Marwa Othman. I'm representing CEED Tunisia. Thank you very much, John, for being with us today and for your presentation. Here in Tunisia, I know we're very pleased to see you again after your last visit here 2 years ago at the CEED Global Conference. So it's good to see you again. So my question is, thinking about Tunisia's economy, and especially given that things lately have been starting to return back to normal here gradually, what sectors do you think can still sustain this pandemic, apart from, let's say, agriculture, construction, healthcare, pharmaceutical companies? Who are the cockroach sectors, if you may? Especially if someone is thinking of starting their own company during the COVID crisis, what advice would you like to give them? Many basically of the recurring issues that our beneficiaries have been facing are related to cash flow, pitching clients and investors, sales and marketing, recruiting staff, and they come to us to seek our advice. So in short, what would you like to tell our Tunisian entrepreneurs? Thank you.
So thank you, Marwa. You know, fortunately, I had the privilege of actually seeing your country, and you live in a beautiful country. And the beauty of your country is that your neighbors' access to Europe is so easy. You have a great English-speaking audience in Tunisia. So the opportunities that exist for Tunisia, and I'm not propagating this. My own suggestion is that if Tunisia can become a great hub for startups from the region to actually come in and set up base here, you will bring in intellect from across Africa. You bring in monies from across Africa because they're going to come in, you know, give a boost to your residential sector, to your hotel sector, to your co-working space. So real estate can benefit tremendously from this aspect of what you're doing. And from here, and for this, the government has to give people, entrepreneurs in Africa, a boost to come and actually do work out of Tunisia. And what Tunisia can do, the sectors that are actually thriving in India are education and healthcare. And healthcare, I'm not talking of physical healthcare, I'm talking of wellness, I'm talking of advice, I'm talking of patient-doctor connect. There are opportunities in the digital world that can actually open up doors. In fact, even food delivery can be such a great opportunity because I don't know about the eating habits of Tunisians. If they've been used to eating out, this crisis actually boxed them in. And today you can open up kitchens. You don't need to open up restaurants. You can open up kitchens and serve delicacies to people's homes. So I don't know what the key drivers for Tunisia are right now or what they were, but there is a lot you can do across verticals where digital becomes the entire buzzword. Did I answer your question, Marwa?
Yes, thank you very much, John. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, John. Our next question comes from Kosovo. So,
thanks, Peter. Hi, John. I'm
Hi, Krishna.
Kreshnik. I'm director of CEED Kosovo. We had the chance to meet each other 2 years ago in CEED Tunisia Business Conference. And I was very impressed from your presentation, in Tunisia. Actually, I have two questions. One is from our entrepreneur, from Faton Demoy, who is in the transport and logistics sector. And he's more interested to know about the advertisement. I mean, I know Faton, he is also investing in other sectors, but he's, particularly for his business in logistics, he's asking, is it smart to make advertisements in more intensive way right after the pandemic crisis?
Good question.
If you can give your explanation, your suggestions.
Good question. I think you should move away from conventional advertising and look at partnerships. See, this crisis has thrown up a great opportunity for collaboration. Both sides of the world, there are challenges everybody's facing. So I'm saying if you collaborate and create joint communication in the digital world and you live off each other's customers, like I talked to you about the customers of the online travel agency, they got 30 million customers. The hotels don't have customers, but they have kitchens operational. Can one feed off the other? So use collaboration. I would strongly urge you all not to spend as a startup, not to invest in advertising, invest in collaborative marketing. Because one, advertising can be like a leaky bucket. You don't know customers coming in, you're spending money, you acquire them, they fall off from the bottom. Whereas when you do collaboration, you have more insights into who their customers, and you can do targeting. And digital media allows you to do that. So without knowing too much about your business, it'd be wrong for me to give you that advice. But I've always looked at collaborations with partners. I'll give you an example of when I was running AirDeck and the airline, I didn't have money for marketing. But I knew who my customer was. My customer was anybody with a two-wheeler, anybody with a four-wheeler. So I did the stupidest thing that anybody can do. I went and signed up with fuel pumps, petrol stations, saying, listen, you guys get car owners and two-wheeler owners. They are my customers. You have the internet. I'm talking of 2004. You have the internet. You have credibility. You take cash. Why don't we allow people to book tickets from petrol stations? People thought I was stupid, and I was, but I didn't know any better. And that contributed, without a rupee spent in marketing, 12% of my revenues in the second day came from this, what's called stupid idea. There's nothing stupid. Try new stuff. I hope that answers Kreshnik with an example of something I did. There are many more. I mean, I set up a pizza parlor. I set up a pizza outlet in a petrol pump, going by the same experience. And the board of this petroleum company told me, John, do you understand that, you can't have fire in a petrol station? And I told the director, I said, sir, due apologies, I have lit up a cigarette in a petrol pump. It's never exploded. He said, you can't be saying that here. I said, but so what we ended up doing for this pizza company, we actually set up electric ovens, which was sparkless. And we got 100 outlets signed up with this petrol company. So overnight, from 4 outlets, this company, US Pizza, went up to 100 outlets. So there are very different ways. I'd urge you all to think out of the box. Break the shackles of that comfort of what has happened in industry. Explore new stuff. Some will work, some won't. Kreshnik, hope I've answered your question.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much, Kreshnik. Thanks, John. We had a question from Tanzania as well. Is Fred on the line?
Peter, there's a question from Africa. So Jonathan, your question on, is it reasonable to practice repurposing a real estate space? Many mall tenant plans can be changed. Of course, yes. You will see something that we're doing in the space, but everything depends on what's your asset, which is moved into a liability, what are the trends, and how do you, repurpose, retool. In fact, there was a session that CEED had by Jeff Hoffman, We talked of repurpose, retool, and redeploy. You must use this seriously, but use data, data, data. Without data, anything is like a blind man walking into the sunset.
John, you actually you preempted my other question. I was going to ask you on the data issue, because when you talked a little bit about, in terms of that last question about repurposing, maybe you can kind of revisit the example that you gave, because you know when you talked about a hotel, you said there was an opportunity, like in two spaces that I remember. You talked about if they had more land, there's actually an opportunity to do some kind of organic farming or growing. And then you also talked a little bit about distance learning, so that if you had kind of premium distance learning opportunities that needed still in-person interaction, you could, if they had big space, obviously you could do this in a way that you know, reemphasized social distancing, but still allowed people to interact. Talk to me a little bit about that, and then also with regard to data, like how do you convince that hotel then to do it? Like what was the quick calculation on, hey, look, this is how these numbers can work, so that you would want to consider doing this new approach?
So, Peter, interesting question. There are two ways to look at it. So I would not encourage anybody to do things in the isolation of data and trends. So if you look at what's happening in India, and I'm talking from India perspective, I'm sure it's applicable to Macedonia, Kosovo, and Tunisia and other places, because there's a thirst for knowledge in these places. And you know, the US universities have this badge where if I've got something from UPenn, you know, my market value is up. So, you know, many of these colleges have come into India and actually set up distance learning programs here. In fact, the world's largest distance learning program is in India. It's called IGNOU Open University. So there is a trend of students actually participating in distance learning. Now the hotels have an advantage. They have premium guests. The premium guests are people who are willing to pay the extra money to get the badge of these organizations, okay? And you already have cases where how HBS is actually doing stuff with the Taj. The other thing, the data that you have is, even during good times, your banquet occupancy is 50%. So I'm saying you can actually, because you have the data, actually start with one center, start with one tie-up. Don't jump into the ocean and try and swim across. Jump into a pond, learn to swim, look at the data. You'll have to tweak some of this. You'll have to bring in digital interventions. Do you need to do that, or will these universities do that? Chances are these universities do that, and you get a share of the revenue. Okay. The second point on the land, in fact, another friend of mine who runs a hotel, he said, because I talked to him about the cockroach, he pushed back. He said, your idea of organic farming is stupid. So I said, okay, great. So what works? He said, no, I would set up a commercial complex, because I got a great land facing the road. I would set up a commercial complex. I said, hey, great, set it up. Now don't waste time, set it up. And you don't need to use the 60% of vacant occupancy. Take road facing, take 20% and set up a nice building and lease it out, because you're in a great space. So, you know, while these are suggestions that I've made based on data, people are taking it to the next level. And that's where all I'm asking people to do is, do not get shackled to comfort and the arrogance of success. Rethink everything.
Yeah, John, that's great. I mean, another mentor of mine once told me, he said, you know, you have to think things through. He said, but sometimes you have to actuate into the right thinking. Like you have to take those steps. And I think that's really sound advice. I have a couple of global questions that'll be coming our way, but we might have one from Morocco first. So Bree, do you have the next question?
Sure, I can get to a couple of the questions that have been in the Q&A. So I'm Bree, I'm CEED Global's Learning and Impact Manager. So love hearing all about data. And I thought that sort of tied in really well with the question that we do have from Morocco about, is there any previous experience, either world crises or economic recessions, which we can take away any relevant key learnings from, either in terms of lessons learned or especially in terms of data, if there's anything we can take from what we've gone through before, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Good question. This is from Sarah, right?
Yes, that's right, from Morocco.
Sarah, please take my example of the cockroach very seriously. The cockroach can survive in a sewer. The cockroach can survive in your kitchen. The cockroach can survive in your cupboards. So it adapts to different needs. Now, there is no previous experience because, I mean, like I gave an example of my own life where I was comatose, I was given up for dead, and there was no coming back. And even when I came back, I was not in a state of mind to be employable. So you have to, and I'm saying, don't get caught up with the comfort of success. Even if there's no crisis, I would strongly urge entrepreneurs to revisit your businesses every month. Go to a bar, go to a coffee shop, have a drink, and rethink on what you can do, not better, what you can do differently. And then take incremental steps to see if this incremental stuff is giving me better results than something that I was used to doing, change. So there is no perfect previous experience because, like I said, this time supply is shut, demand is shut, confusion exists, liquidity exists, and you're isolated. This is like one I've never seen in my life. So you have to adapt to different needs and do it basis your business needs or your personal needs.
Great. And so another question that we have from Tunisia is how do you balance basically going through this tough time that we're in where sometimes cases will go up and sometimes they go down, there'll be a spike and then there won't be. So obviously businesses want to open up as soon as possible, but they want to be responsible, right? And so I think some businesses and some entrepreneurs are a little bit hesitant to come back full force because it could be dangerous or it could honestly be a reputational risk if people don't receive that well. So I'm curious how you think entrepreneurs might deal with that.
So India is at an interesting juncture. You know, the government here did a fabulous job in containing the crisis. They locked the country down and we had the lowest amount of affected symptomatic cases in India. But a few weeks back, it actually opened up the country because, you know, there was a fear of losing your life to COVID or losing lives to starvation. And you know, India is such a huge population, the danger of the latter would be far too serious. So they opened up the economy and the cases have actually spiked. In fact, about a month back, we didn't even feature in the top 15 countries with COVID cases. Today, we're in the top 8 or 9. My only suggestion is do not live in fear. Because if you let fear govern your life, and look at what the government did, the beauty of what our government did is they used this 2 months of lockdown to contain the spread, but they also did the right thing to get the PPE suits, the hand sanitizers, the masks, production of that up. They got the healthcare system, beds in place, they got quarantine zones. So the government did a brilliant job in creating the offensive. So when cases spike, they are ready for it. So, and I think the government is also, in fact, today I saw an ad done by one of India's most iconic film stars who's come in and said, listen, it's time for you to go to work, but hey, be careful. Keep social distancing, keep your masks on, wash your hands regularly, and be careful.
Great.
And therefore, the government is urging people, don't live in fear, but follow best practices.
Sounds good.
Great. Trying to see if we have other questions here in the queue that have kind of come through. Bree, do we have any other ones that came through besides the ones I've seen?
Yes,
Otherwise, I have
we have a couple more here. Another one is around recruitment. So what is better for a startupper? Working with a motivated team that's not very experienced or working with a very experienced team when cash might be a little bit tight? What is the best practice in your opinion for this one?
This is catch-22. Experienced teams are resistant to change. The youngsters are more adventurous. So like I mentioned to Dimitra, like you have to carry the team with you, but you have to let the stragglers go. And even if they are, you have to make an attempt to get them onboarded, because if you don't get your team members onboarded and with you, fighting in the trenches with you, you're bound to not get the best results. So it's important for you to carry everybody in, but those who resist, like the gate migration, leave them by the wayside. Look after them well, pay them 1 month's salary, 2 months' salary, and let them go. my friends on this panel, these are the way I handle stuff. We are wired differently. I'm just sharing what I have done because I've got so much more experience across verticals and how I've approached them. So these are my suggestions. Like I tell startups that I work with, I can only give you, see, it's easy for me to sit here and give you suggestions, but many of them are based on real life experiences, but they worked in the way I handled it. People are wired differently. So please adjust to your own DNA.
John, I had kind of a follow-up. You talked a lot about cloud services and really things kind of falling into two different buckets, which are there are certain remote services that really have gone well online, whether it's education, you mentioned the cloud kitchen even, and there's a mix of some of the physical services. I love the examples of the hotels and some of the real estate examples where the more traditional services that then they were able to outsource to people to do this. Could you talk a little bit about maybe as we think about this crisis lasting for the next, you said 18 to 24 months, but this is a trend that would go well beyond that. Maybe talk a little bit about even like things like fintech. That's one thing that's picking up quite a bit in North Africa before COVID-19, but one has started to find kind of a way to accelerate a bit, just because of the fact that people want to social distance. Are you seeing, I mean, obviously you probably have some of the same trends in India, but are there any examples for you that come to mind or in that space or other kinds of spaces?
Africa is a great country because they adopted mobile payments well before any country. M-Pesa is a classic case of, I mean, the penetration of M-Pesa in the markets that I've been to is phenomenal. But in India also, in 2000, the penetration of credit cards was 3%. Till about 3 years back, the penetration of digital payments was some 6%. I don't remember the numbers, but it's now as high as 50, 60%. And I wouldn't be surprised where the COVID has actually made it far, far larger in numbers with it become as ubiquitous as the mobile phone. So I'll give you another example, Peter. There's a company in India which does gyms. It is the largest gym company in India, fitness company in India with about 300 gyms. When the place shut down, they had no choice but to give up the properties. They moved completely digital. So now with the lockdown being eased, what they're doing, some of their key centers, they're creating gym studios. So you have fitness experts come there and they've wired it up with cameras and they are using that now. So if you're a survivor, if you're a cockroach, you find a way to survive because you have to let your survival instincts come to the top. And let me tell you, we're all survivors.
Exactly.
And listen to your instincts. Sorry.
No, perfect, John. That's a great answer to the question. We're kind of coming down to the end of our hour now, and I really wanted to thank you for taking the time out of your day. I know it's a little bit late; it's getting into your evening at this point to share your insights and advice with us. I think as a kind of a awareness building here, I will let people know that even if we're coming into the summer here in the Northern Hemisphere, we're going to continue our CEED Talks. This is a way for us to continue getting expertise and kind of create these sounding boards and allow our entrepreneurs and anyone, for that fact, around the world to get better ideas that they can then begin to actualize. If you don't mind, John, I'm going to do a quick advertisement. Our next CEED Leaders Talk will be in about 2 weeks' time on June 17th. It's actually a gentleman John. It's going to be with the head of the Illy Group, Ricardo Illy, part of a pretty large family business in Italy.
In Italy.
He will have a pretty unique perspective based upon his experience, not only with the company, but obviously through what Northern Italy has gone through in the last few months. It's been a pretty dramatic time in terms of the impact of the coronavirus. So I look forward to that. And he has some really great ideas about how he is not only navigating the crisis, but kind of like yourself, being positive and looking at the ways through. That this is just, if I can close with something that John said, I really love it. The dinosaurs, they do die. They always die, but the cockroaches survive. So it's a question of maybe swallowing a little bit of pride now and then, and taking some of that humility and even gratitude about what we do have right now and seeing how we can do the things that we've learned about even before with Jeff Hoffman in terms of repurposing or maybe even retooling some of the team. And I think that's the kind of the attitude of all that CEED has, and all companies with whom we work, is to really find those pathways forward. So John, I just want to say for the group that's here, thank you so much for your time today. It was really insightful. We will make the materials available online. I'm sure that Bree and the team will be sending out some of the information about that. And we just want to thank everybody for taking the time to participate. And it can also be found online. If you didn't have a chance to watch all of it today, or you want to share this with friends, we will have links so that you can revisit this opportunity at a later point. Again, John Kuruvilla, thank you so much for your time, and it was a real pleasure. Thank you.
Namaste. Thank you, Peter. Stay safe,
Namaste.
guys.
Ciao.
All the best. God
Bye-bye.
bless.